Hey there, instructional leader. Welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show. If you are anything like me, then you envision collaborative learning communities in which the vast majority of educators are eager and inspired to go to work, feel valued and empowered while at work, and end each day with a great sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I believe this is possible if you have built cohesive, vision-driven teams. Teams that collectively move toward a common focus with leaders who are able to hold them accountable without micromanaging. And on this show, that's exactly what we talk about. Anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. If you want to be part of the 30% who actually helps teams achieve district and campus goals, then you've taken a great first step in listening to this podcast. And if you're really serious about it, then you are going to reach out to me and see how we can work together to make that possible. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to tonight's show. I am pumped to have you here with us tonight. We've got quite a few listeners that are live, and that's all a testament to my guest, Dr. Alfreda Howard. Alfreda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tonight we are going to talk about accessing leadership for aspiring leaders. And can I call you Dr. Alfreda? What do people call you?
I actually go by Dr. Frida. So if that's even easier, let's do that.
I love it. That's so fun. That's way easier than saying your full name. Dr. Frida. That's awesome. And now I feel like, we're just friends hanging out together tonight, which makes it even better.
Yes.
Okay, so tonight we are actually going to be talking to Dr. Frida about her upcoming book, and she's going to tell us some nuggets of gold from that book. And so I'm hoping you guys are going to walk away with like some pieces of wisdom that are going to allow you to become the aspiring leader that you can be. Now, before we get started, let's hear a little bit about you, Dr. Frida. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and those kinds of things.
Okay, well, I am Alfreda Howard. I am a native of Augusta, Georgia. I currently serve as an elementary school principal in the Richmond County school system, and I'm also the District 3 president for the Georgia Association of Elementary School Principals. I'm mother to one. I'm so proud of him. He's in his first year at Morehouse College in Atlanta. And I am just so grateful for my work family, my family, and my friends and leader friends to show up today for me. So definitely a lover of all things female leadership, educational leadership, period. So definitely want to be that person that helps bring the next person up to those roles.
Yes, all about being a multiplier is what it sounds like.
Yes.
I'm excited to visit with you tonight, all about that. But let's do a quick, I want to start something new just for those of you who consistently listen to this show. And by the way, thank you for consistently listening to the show. I'm going to try out a little subsection of this or that. So I'm going to ask you like 4 questions, Dr. Frida, and you're just going to kind of give us a very brief answer to these. Okay. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. This or that. Are you the person who waits until your gas light is on to get gas, or do you get gas like 15 miles, 30 miles, like well in advance?
Okay, this is so arrogant. I drive a Tesla, so no gas here. But if I was a gas driver, I put gas in my car in advance because I never wanted to be stranded.
Okay. And I think that tells a lot about a person. I really do. Because I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, it's on empty. All right, we got 30 more miles.
No way.
Okay, next one. Are you more of a we're having breakfast for breakfast or we're having breakfast for dinner kind of person?
Oh man, breakfast for dinner. Pancakes, bacon, eggs. Let's do it. Dinner.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes, I agree with that. All right. An educational this or that. Do you prefer working or facilitating with teams of people or really coaching one-on-one with people?
That's tough. I'm going to say that one-on-one is very key to me because it allows me to give my undivided attention to that person and what their needs are and be able to talk to their strengths. So definitely a one-on-one, but obviously my career, I have to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. And then here's our last one. This or that. Do you say data or do you say data?
Data.
Okay, I say both because I never know who's gonna say what. So I'm like, I say them both together, like data, all
Yeah.
just all as if it's one word. Okay, I'm pumped to visit with you about your book because the title alone is striking. I love this title, guys. The title of her book is Apply Your Makeup. I'm gonna let you tell our audience a little bit more about this book, but what inspired you to write it? What message are you hoping that readers take away from this book that you were writing?
Well, Casey, that is such a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. So, a couple of reasons why I've authored this book. First, being when I first decided in my career that I wanted to step into leadership, I wanted to see what that was going to be like. I looked around and I couldn't find a blueprint. I could not find a clear path of how do we go from the classroom to jumping into leadership roles. And so, I always knew that once I ascended to leadership, I wanted to be able to have some sort of, my favorite color is pink. So I'm going to say pink print, which is a blueprint for those, especially females who aspire to leadership, to be able to have a path that they can take. Keeping in mind that nobody's path is going to be exactly the same, but just some advancement strategies that were very beneficial to me in my journey. Additionally, when I started my doctoral work, we were supposed to identify a problem of practice. And at that time, COVID-19 had happened. So I was at home, plenty of free time. And I remember struggling to find a topic that just felt right, just felt good to me. And so I was watching the news, I want to say, and I noticed that there were, especially in the Georgia area, there were a lot of African-American women who were being announced as superintendents. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, what's their story? How did they get there? What path did they take? And so I immediately was sold on this topic, like, yes, leadership to the top, because we all know that the superintendency is the CEO of the public school system. So just in short, I definitely researched some of those women and I started to see similarities in their work, similarities in the type of jobs that they held within myself. And I knew, okay, this is it. Let's get it. Let's figure out how do we get to top leadership being a female.
Yeah, that's so powerful. What you're talking about reminds me last weekend I went to, it's called TCWSE, and it's Texas Council of Women's School Executives. And so this conference is just imagine this massive ballroom of all female either leaders or aspiring leaders. You would have just been drooling at all of the stories and like just how impactful it was to see all of these women from a variety of different backgrounds, a variety of ethnicities, a variety of ages. It was phenomenal. And so I applaud you for really moving in that direction and thinking about that as your topic of study. But I also know, as you do as well, that there are challenges that come with female educators who are aspiring to those leadership positions. So tell a little bit about those kinds of challenges and how you're hoping your book is going to help women to navigate those challenges.
All right. Well, again, applying your makeup, it links to women because we wear makeup, right? And in my book, I talk about the correlation between leadership, how it's bold, confident. When a woman wears her makeup, she's applying her makeup. She's got a vision in the end. How is it going to look? What's going to be the outcome? So I'm making that connection there. But in my dissertation, I actually categorized the barriers that women face. And so I put it into 3 categories. The first being the internal barriers, that imposter syndrome that we all it lives in our heads. We talk ourselves out of positions. We talk ourselves out of opportunities. In my research, I learned that men will they will see a job description and see one or two things on that list that they can identify with and go ahead and apply for the job. But females, we typically sit and wait. We wait until we meet all the criteria before we apply for these leadership roles. So in my research, I found that a lot of men get into leadership early on in their careers, whereas women, we tend to wait till later in our careers, right before retirement. And so that truly speaks to the research I found from the superintendent studies that are done every year, that women occupy only 25% of the superintendency, where men occupy 75%. Another category of barriers is the external barriers. When we talk about that work-life balance, Casey, I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but it's so hard to be able to answer the demands of work, as well as being available to the pressures of home and making sure we're giving enough to our spouses, our children, our friends. And so you're being pulled in all these directions. And so I know our society is big on self-care, but there is a lot to that. And so leaders have to make sure they're diligent about taking care of their bodies, eating right, exercising, journaling, talking to friends. You've got to have a village. This is not something that, you can do alone. And then that last category is the societal barriers that we face, mainly what's a man's role versus a woman's role. A man's role for leadership is often authoritative, where females, we're more nurturing, charismatic, and that's how we lead. And so if a woman is too authoritative, then she's seen as aggressive or too hard, whereas, men are more accepted in those roles. So those are the main barriers that I did discuss in my dissertation and followed through in my Apply Your Makeup. And I was able to connect some real experiences that I saw on my journey to leadership.
Okay, I can already tell you that people are going to be asking me, when is this book going to be available? So let's go ahead and talk about that real quick, because I want to be sure people know when it's coming, so you'll be ready for it. So when are you anticipating publishing the book?
So the book should be available spring 2025. So around the April, May, we're looking for this book to be ready to put into the hands and digital devices for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah. So it will probably most definitely be ready by the time summer hits. So if you are listening and you are currently a leader, get the book for yourself and get it for aspiring leaders. I cannot tell you enough, and I know that your book probably, and I know you just in our short conversation before we got started, but I know that your book is meant to empower not just one person, but multiple people who are aspiring to become the leader. And guys, if you are a leader, it is your responsibility to seek out other potential leaders and let them know what you see in them, and handing them this book is one way to do that. Doesn't have to be a big conversation, but people deserve to have this kind of book in their hands, because we want to break down those barriers that keep people, specifically females, from taking that next step. I'm pumped about this book. Okay. Let's talk about how aspiring leaders, I want to talk a little bit about what you see in aspiring leaders specifically, and what helps just give them that bump to go to that next level. And I want to talk a little bit about clarity. How can aspiring leaders identify and clarify their leadership vision? Even if they're not administrators, instructional coaches or team facilitators, because these people eventually, typically they are the ones that are aspiring to become leaders.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely being able to tap into who you are, your authentic self. Once you identify that and how you connect with people, I think that sets the stage of your leadership style. And again, like you expressed, Casey, it doesn't have to be a defined leadership role. Leadership can be service to people, service to just the work. And so I challenge those who aspire to leadership or are serving in roles where it can eventually be a leadership role, definitely making sure that you have a vision, and your vision is based on number one, your experiences, but also what is your end game? What is the outcome at the end of this experience that you hope for, that you desire? And so again, having even those colleagues that tap into it. I talk a little bit in my book about mentorship, and you talked about that too, Casey, but not just us seeking out mentors, but being willing to mentor others. Empowerment is so huge. And so I believe that if leaders have that spirit of grace, spirit of service, and are willing to take those opportunities, I think it all together molds what their vision will be, especially their leadership.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that you were talking about like your values and really understanding what are my core values. Without that, like, how are we going to lead anyone else? I just have to put this up on the screen. That's my principal. I'm so proud of you, Dr. Howard. Love you.
Thank you.
Hey, that's a testament to someone who's doing the real work, boots on the ground. So, and there's something to be said about those who write books that are in the field currently, because you know that what they're saying to you. And, I talk about this in my book too, like in one of the sections, when you read books, inevitably it's the ideal, right? Like, we're telling you what is ideal. And sometimes I think when people read things like that, they're like, oh, well, that's not real world, or yeah, that's the ideal situation. But without thought leadership, without people saying, here's what we've experienced and what we are sharing with you that will be helpful and beneficial, without that thought leadership, what are we aspiring towards? Like, what are we working towards? So I love that this thought leadership is coming from you, someone who is doing the work and getting these kinds of comments live in this episode. It's so cool. So we've talked a little bit about clarity. On this show, I also talk about collaboration. And I want to know, if you're thinking about those aspiring leaders, does your book share how they can foster strong collaboration among teams, or especially in complex school settings?
Absolutely. So I talk a little bit about I call it the ACCA. It's the acronym for sense of agency, sense of collaboration, sense of community, and sense of advocacy. And so with that being said, it talks about how leaders, aspiring leaders, tap into those four arenas so that they, number one, have a voice. They have the collaboration tools, because we don't want, when we get together, for it to be time that's unproductive or wasteful, or we didn't have a clear target of what we were doing in the first place. So making sure we have those tools to truly collaborate, but also that community. And I always call my principal friends my principals. Y'all know who you are, because again, this work is not something you can do in isolation. And so making sure aspiring leaders know that those areas are key, as well as then advocating. You have to advocate for yourself, your students, as well as your school. So I believe when those four tenets are structured and in place, it allows a free rein for aspiring leaders to be able to work with cohesive teams. One of the big things that I'm also making sure I'm cognizant of is making sure that we meet, and we meet often, because you can't keep the ideas fresh and the work fresh if there's big gaps, you know what I mean, in the work. Mm-hmm. So definitely I speak to that in my book, Apply Your Makeup.
Yeah, so good, so good, so good. And I want to talk a little bit. I'm going off script, just so you know. But I want to talk a little bit about that one thing that we all say we don't have enough of, which is time. So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, you prioritize that. Like, you prioritize meeting and meeting often, but making it purposeful and intentional. Yes?
Yes. Casey, that did not come easily. It took time. It took experience. And I'm always, my teachers are going to laugh, but I always talk about, y'all need to relinquish some of that to your students, let them lead. But I had to do that too. We were talking to a type A personality, perfectionist, want to control everything. But I found that the best work, I'm going to say the best work occurred when I learned to let go and trust. And Brene Brown, one of my favorite authors, she talks about vulnerability, and that was not easy for me. So being able to talk to your team and what do y'all need from me? Okay, we need more opportunities to lead ourselves. Okay, all right. So then, Dr. Freed, you got to back up and allow them to do that, but be available for support purposes. So, yeah, time management's hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. I know there's somebody that's here live with us. I want you guys to put the word relinquish in the comments because that is so good. And I love that word specifically because I think you can use that word as a leader and it feels so much more I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It feels so much more assertive with empathy versus micromanagerial. Like there's a human side to that word relinquish, whereas I feel like when we say you've got to let go of control, there's a different I think that's a little bit harder to wrap our brains around is what do you mean by let go of control? I can't let go of control. But when you say relinquish, I think that takes on a whole other level of like we can process that in our brains a little bit more, because I'm not letting go of control necessarily, but I'm relinquishing some things so that something else can happen.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So good. Okay. Man, I feel like this mic drop. We could just end there, but we're not going to. Let's talk about how you guide educators in developing those leadership skills. We've talked a lot about different leadership skills, I think, just kind of inherently in this conversation. But how do you guide educators in developing these leadership skills, the personal character that's needed to inspire and lead others effectively? Because we know leadership is a lot about influence.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think it begins day one, whatever your day one looks like. But how do you talk to people? How do you treat people? Do we speak with kindness? Do we speak with care? People can do things that you might have said 100 times, please don't do. But even when you have to correct, are we correcting with support and empathy? But how do I guide aspiring leaders and educators? Again, kind of like we talked about a little bit before, giving them opportunities. So whether that's, serving on the leadership teams, whether it's, being the lead of a committee, engaging parents with, PTO programs, just different things like that. You've got to give people a chance. And so it comes from modeling. And as leaders, we model all the time, even when we don't realize it. So everything we do, like you talked about, that influence is going to influence our followers or those that are under our charge. So I definitely think interactions are so important, so key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. In an episode I did not too long ago with I can't remember exactly who the guest was, but we were talking about how like every conversation counts, every moment matters. And it's hard to keep that top of mind, especially when you're leading, because you have 1,000,001 things on your list that you're trying to take care of and manage. And would you agree that all of these things that you're talking about here tonight, but probably also in the book, they are things, and you already mentioned it, but they're things that take time and have to become habits, which is to say they have to be practiced habits. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Every year I'm evolving as a leader. And so when we talk about that practice, it's not just for the aspiring leaders, it's for the active leaders as well. Because there's still an end game even after the principalship. And so making sure that, like you said, every essence that we have with our charge, with our students, our families, it has to be thought out, purposeful, and intentional.
Mm-hmm. So then let's talk about what advice you would give those educators who are aiming to take that first step toward a leadership role. Or, even I think sometimes, guys, if you're watching this live and if you're listening, you're not seeing this, but I, for whatever reason, like I look up when I start thinking about what it is I want to say. It's almost like, I don't know, I'm looking up to see if there are words there that I'm going to pull out. I'm not. It's just it's my thinking face. But I, I think you would agree with this, that we often see leadership as like a positional thing, like we're trying to strive to the next position, the next position, the next position. But I feel like I've heard you mention something to the effect of, you didn't say this specifically, but it's what I'm gathering from it. Something to the effect of, we truly can be 360-degree leaders, right? Like I can be a leader even as a classroom teacher. And so I want to be sure that I'm not discrediting that we can be a leader wherever we are. But for those people who really are wanting to aspire to be leaders and take next steps, what advice would you give them? And what are some common misconceptions that they should avoid?
Okay, so being open, if your principal or your leader in whatever capacity asks you to do a task, being open to that task. And people are always thinking it's got to be in charge of something, but it could be a part of a team effort to get something done for your school. So I have a teacher in mind that when you ask that question, I'm thinking about her. And one of the conversations we had recently was, Dr. Howard, you're stretching me. You're always stretching me, whatever you give me. And it's like, you want leadership, don't you? Like, yeah. So it's not just in the day to day, but it's like thinking long-term planning, long-term. We're working on master scheduling right now. I've got her going to the meetings and helping to plan what pieces go here. And so she's getting a chance to see all of the pieces that normally, if you don't have those type of conversations or show that type of interest, you really don't know how that's done. So like, again, you just got to be open to opportunities. Be careful about the no's. I always say now, I'll never ask you to do anything unethical, unmoral, all of those things, but be open to being stretched, to act things that you're not necessarily comfortable with, but you're willing to learn from. Definitely show an initiative. When things have to be done, hey, I'll go ahead and take care of that for you. That's how true servant leadership, how the essence of what it is, but it's what you also role model within yourself. So definitely be open and willing to be uncomfortable to grow.
Yeah.
One of those misconceptions, Casey, I might get in trouble for this one. Some of the misconceptions are thinking that leadership is a 7 to 3 or 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5. It is not. I sometimes joke and say, like, we're on call all the time. Matter of fact, I've got a personal phone and a principal phone. So this misconception that leadership, it has an on and off. It doesn't. But again, like we talked about before, being able to prioritize, being able to, okay, I'm with family right now. So if this is not something that needs my urgent attention, I can just kind of put that to the side for the time being. Just those kinds of things. Another misconception is that effective leaders just sit at their desk all day long and work on their computers. No. I definitely get my steps in every day. Like I'm in classrooms, I'm around the school, I'm visible, I'm in the car rider line, I'm at lunch duty. Like those are the true effective leaders. So if you don't have that in you, that spirit of service, that spirit of making people feel better after an encounter with you than what they were before, then leadership is not your calling. It just isn't.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I hope that people hearing this will heed that and take it to heart. I think it's Lashana says she does it all. And I have no doubt in the brief time that I have known Dr. Freda that she does it all and probably does it very well. Hence the book that you are about to publish. So we're going to close tonight's conversation. I want you to share what people can do, like what practical steps they can take to get started right away, which you kind of mentioned those things. So you also could share, like, what would you hope people take away from tonight's conversation?
Okay. Well, Casey, again, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show tonight. But I don't want to give it all away, but applying your makeup, my book that's coming out in the spring, makeup is actually an acronym for all of the advancement strategies. So as you did say, I did share a couple. So like M, for instance, is mentorship, and I talk all about that. One that we really didn't hit on tonight is the K of it, and it's being knowledgeable about the politics of leadership. We touched a little bit on those barriers that can lead to some of the politics, but in any types of leadership, especially when you climb, there's always going to be politics that you have to face, whether it's the gatekeepers, the queen bees. And so I talk about that in my book. And another special one to me is the P, it's the pathway leverage. One of the things I learned when working on my dissertation was that several of these female superintendents that I interviewed, many of them did not even have an undergraduate degree in education. Many had degrees in other fields, such as business, mathematic backgrounds, and all that. So I found that as an aha, but then it led me to believe, are they better leaders because of these backgrounds they have, as opposed to educational leadership? And just having like for me, for instance, an elementary education undergrad degree. So just a lot of little things I discussed. So I did share that secret with you, that the word makeup is the acronym for the advancement strategies.
So that just means that after it comes out and I read it, we have to get on here and do another episode.
I'm down, Casey. Let's do it.
That's what it sounds like to me. I'm just saying. Okay. Well, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you? What are all of the locations people can find you?
Okay. Well, I definitely have a Facebook page. It's The Principal Matters. I also have an Instagram, the_principal_matters. I can be contacted through email at principalinmatters@gmail.com. And Casey, I was inspired from you because in our previous conversation, we talked about collaboration, how it's more important and more powerful than competition ever. So I do know some next steps for me after the release of the book is to definitely start a career in some podcasting, as well as some public speaking at conferences. So definitely looking at some of those opportunities. So I have shared my YouTube link that doesn't currently have any content, but eventually it will.
Awesome. Yeah. And you guys, if you are catching this live, you won't see it in the show notes tonight. But if you want to watch the replay, you'll see all of the things that Dr. Freda just shared in the show notes, where to locate her and all of those things, and start accessing her channels so you can see, like, I just think it's so cool to see how things unfold and grow. And this book is going to be definitely one of those things. So I'm super excited for it to come out. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And in fact, I can't wait to apply my own makeup. This has been such a great episode. Thank you for joining me tonight, Dr. Freda.
Thank you so much, Casey. Can't wait to visit you in Texas.
Yes, that's right. We're going to make it happen. All right. We'll catch you later. Hey guys, I want to just drop a few things before you leave tonight. Number one, I've been talking about it a lot lately, but CEC 2025, that's Council for Exceptional Children, their convention for 2025 is in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm so excited to be the opening keynote speaker. I hope you will join me there. I've already met lots of great people who are going to be going to this conference as well. And then you've heard that Dr. Freda has published her book. We actually have the same publisher. She's going to be publishing through Stephanie McConnell, Principles. Just like I have written The Craft of Clarity, 6 steps to bridge gaps, foster commitment, and create sustainable alignment. And I hope you will check that out on Amazon. And until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. See you. Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with KC on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.